Well, hi, everyone, and welcome. I am Drew Greenwald. For those of you who don't know me, I am the co-chair of the Prayer Practice and Learning Committee and a member of our Board of Trustees. I'm really glad you're able to join us tonight for the next installment of the Pittsburgh Jewish History series with Rich Brean. And I'd like to just give a little introduction, and then I will hand it over. Rich attended Colfax School, John Minadeo School, and Taylor Alderdice High School. That was listed as most important. And less important, he received a BA in history from Kenyon College, a master's in public affairs and urban planning from Princeton University, and his JD from Harvard Law School. Aside from his 12 years of higher education, Rich has lived his entire life in the 14th Ward, 2 years at 5548 Darlington Road, 16 years at 6492 Monitor Street, 6 lonely bachelor years at 5700 Fifth Avenue. It's on the 14th Ward side of Fifth Avenue, and coming up on 38 years of wedded bliss at 300 Leroy Road. In 2018, Rich retired as general counsel after a 40-year career at the United Steelworkers International Union Legal Department. Rich has been named a fellow of the College of Labor and Employment Lawyers and received an honorary doctorate from Kenyon for his contributions to the college and the labor movement. A member of Road of Sholum since 1978, Rich and his wife Karen, past president of Road of Sholum, live in Point Breeze. And proving that prayers can be answered, their daughter Molly has recently returned to Pittsburgh from London and has reversed the family's migration trend by moving downtown. With that, I would like to introduce, perhaps most importantly, our friend and fellow congregant, Rich Brean.
Great. Thank you very much, Drew. I beg your indulgence tonight. If you'll recall my 2 Hill District talks, I read them. That way, maximizing the amount of information per minute. I'm doing the same tonight, but there's a difference. I can't find my glasses. We've been tearing this house apart for 10 days. We've now arranged an appointment of the optometrist 2 days from now. And if it were then, I could read it with glasses. Instead, you'll see less of eye contact and that sort of thing, making you feel welcome. I'll be reading, but a little bit closer to my face, okay? Starting off here, I'd like to thank the Prayer Practice and Learning Committee of Road of Sholum for this fantastic history series. I'd also like to thank Karen, who's here by my side, out of sight, my IT consultant, typist, photographer, sounding board. Without Karen, no presentation. I'd also like to thank Eric Lidgy, the director of the Jewish Archives at the Heinz History Center, who sent me invaluable information about the East End and South Oakland parts of the talk. Now, if you're interested in learning more about the Jewish history of Squirrel Hill, I strongly suggest you buy a book entitled Squirrel Hill, A Neighborhood History. It's edited by Helen Wilson, who's the president of Squirrel Hill Historical Society. Has a terrific chapter by Barbara Burston on the Jewish history of Squirrel Hill. And believe it or not, listen to this. There's a chapter by Michael Ehrman, which details changes in the Squirrel Hill Business District from 1912 to 2017. That's 105 years, folks. Okay. Now, the outline of my talk is set first in the first slide. Coming up, hopefully. Okay.
I'm not sure why it's not moving. There we go.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Now, take a minute to look at it, if you will. In part 2, we're going to go back to the Hill District to document the population decline as Jews leave the Hill for Beachview, South Oakland, East End, and Squirrel Hill. In part 3, we'll discuss the 3 Jewish communities that have vanished: Beachview, South Oakland, and East End, and we'll learn about their location, their synagogues, and why they disappeared. In part 4, we'll take up the community that survived, Squirrel Hill. To do Squirrel Hill justice, I need 15 hours, but I'll do my best to explain it in 15 minutes. And I'll explain why it's celebrating its 100th birthday when by all rights, it should have disappeared long ago. Now, starting with Roman 2, the Jews leave for Beachview, South Oakland, East End, and Squirrel Hill. When we last saw each other back in 2021, I was talking about that long lost and deeply missed, if only in hindsight, phenomenon known as the Jewish Hill District. The Jewish Hill was also the African American Hill, since the two groups shared the Hill District from 1910 to 1950. The Jews, even if hampered by anti-Semitism, were blessed with white skins. They managed to get out and prosper. The Blacks, hemmed in by racism, were left behind and remained poor. This photo, given to me by Tim Littman, our Brotherhood president, was taken on Robert Street, looking north towards Center Avenue. It will get you into the spirit of the evening and perfectly captures the easy amity of Jews and Blacks to find the Hill District. In the foreground on the left is a jitney stand. Jitneys were informal, illegal taxis. From the look of the cars, the photo was taken sometime in the late 1920s. The woman nearest the camera is a classic Jewish booby, whose posture is one of complete relaxation and enjoyment, while she leans forward to join in on the conversation. On the next porch is another elderly woman who appears to be African American. Both are talking to a young Black jitney driver who is leaning against the porch railing in a very casual and relaxed stance as he turns to speak to the Jewish woman. Towards the middle right of the photograph towards the middle right of the photograph, and right there, the building at the corner of Center and Roberts contains a drugstore, at which Tim's father, Abe, worked as a pharmacist. The same building will become J Drug Company, which my father owned, which we talked about so much in my Hill District talks. I see that Sheldon Gelman, my cousin Shep, is on this call. Shep also worked in the drugstore, as will Larry Gelman, if Larry's on this call, and my brother Bob. Now, except for the obvious poverty of everything in sight, it's a lovely scene of multiracial mini society. But there's one massive reality missing from this picture. The Jews are getting out of the Hill. The Roaring 20s were prosperous times for America, a significant portion of Hill District Jews. Jewish merchants and professionals, but not workers, were leaving the Hill in increasing numbers all through the 1920s, with Squirrel Hill being their preferred destination. Evidence of the magnitude of this exodus is provided by the fact that the number of Jewish students at Hill District schools dropped precipitously in only 4 years, from 4,119 in 1924 to 2,796 in 1928. In 1928, Miller School, 2 blocks away from the scene in this photo and our mother's alma mater, still had the greatest number of Jews of any elementary school in the Pittsburgh public schools, with 728 students. The Colfax and Squirrel Hill was a close second with 708. With the Depression, the exodus of the Jews from the Hill noticeably slowed, but they continued to leave the Hill. By 1940, Jewish enrollment in Hill District schools was down to 1,173 students. With Pittsburgh's economic boom during and after World War II, the movement of Jews from the Hill accelerated once again, and by 1940, only 167 Jewish pupils remained in Hill District schools. Where did the thousands of disappearing Jewish families go to from the Hill District? There were 4 main destinations: Beachview, South Oakland, East End, and Squirrel Hill. 3 of these destinations have vanished as Jewish communities: Beachview, South Oakland, and East End. Only one survives today as a Jewish community, Squirrel Hill. The 8 Brean children you learned about during last year's Hill District lectures followed this migration pattern. When they initially left the Brean house on Reed Street in the Upper Hill, the first child in 1935 and the last in 1946. 3 moved to South Oakland, 3 to East End, 1 to Squirrel Hill, and 1 to Los Angeles. Ultimately, most of the 8 would move to Squirrel Hill as adults. And of their 13 children in my generation, 8 will graduate from Alderdice, 3 from Peabody, and 1 each from a high school in California and Florida. The entirety of my mother's family, Bobby Gelman, Uncle Sam and Aunt Ann, and Uncle Max, moved as a group in 1940 from Robert Street in the Middle Hill to a row house at 5548 Darlington Road in Squirrel Hill between Whiteman and Murdoch Streets. They were joined that same year by my parents, who've been living in South Oakland since 1938. Both of my Gelman cousins, Shep and Larry, would graduate from Alderdice. Now let's go on to Roman 3, the vanished communities of Beachview, South Oakland, and East End. For those of you who are not familiar with Beachview, I'd like to give you some helpful background. Along with Brookline and Banksville, Beachview is among the most important communities in Pittsburgh's 19th Ward. It was originally part of Lower St. Clair Township, which was annexed by the city in 1909. Beachview is very hilly and for generations has hosted a large Italian population. It is now the center of Pittsburgh's growing Latino community. To reach Beachview, you travel through the Liberty Tubes and down West Liberty Avenue to Cape May Avenue, where you make a right. You then climb the hill, whose main business district is along Broadway Avenue, where today the Port Authority's T runs right down the middle of the street. Even before the end of World War I, Jews from the Hill District, the Keys Rocks, and the South Side were migrating to Beachview, which had clean air, a 10-minute streetcar ride to downtown, and a brand new high-quality high school, South Hills, which opened in 1917. Truly, the rise of Beachview as a Jewish community is attributable to a single woman, the remarkable Rebecca Ruderman, who went door to door in 1917, pounding on every doorbell in sight, locating every Jewish family, and then signing up the kids for a Sunday school which she had started. Perhaps shamed by Rebecca's energy and achievement, the men of Beachview chartered an Orthodox shul in 1919, which they named the Beachview Hebrew Congregation, Bethel. The families of Bethel were not wealthy, and it took them until 1926 to gather the funds to build their shul at 1910 Broadway, which you see here. In 1934, the Mechitza came down at Bethel, and men and women sat together, which is a conservative, not Orthodox practice. In 1950, the congregation joined the conservative movement.
It's just like a religious school.
Yeah. And here, to show the vitality of the school, this is 1940. This is on Broadway in Beachview. These are the Jewish children of the religious school of Bethel. Beachview was and is a pleasant middle-class community. But after World War II, the Bethel membership increasingly moved to Brookline, a city neighborhood with a more suburban feel, as well as to three actual suburbs, Scott Township, Green Tree, and above all, Mount Lebanon, where by 1954, a new Reformed congregation, Temple Emmanuel, had been founded. In 1959, the Bethel board voted to move the congregation to Mount Lebanon, and a new shul with its Jewish roots firmly planted in the Hill District opened on Cochrane Road in 1962. The Broadway Avenue shul was demolished, and the Beachview branch of the Carnegie Library now stands on the site. I've personally known only one Pittsburgh Jew who grew up in Beachview, and most of the people listening in on Zoom tonight know her as well. Our beloved and deeply missed Gladys Harem, who Karen misses dearly every day. Gladys was a true rock of Road of Sholum, whose father moved his family to East End so she could attend Peabody High School with its significant Jewish population, which dwarfed that of South Hills High in the 1950s. Today, it is highly probable that not a single Jew is still living in Beachview. We next turn to South Oakland. Unlike East End, which remains a vivid memory for many Jewish Pittsburghers, South Oakland has all but vanished from our recollection, but not that of the Brean family, since it provides my favorite story of our parents, which involves an incident which occurred in 1938, 10 years before I was born in 1948. The story revolves around the famous Homer and the Gloaming. Now, gloaming means twilight in Scots Gaelic. This home run is remembered in Chicago, the way Bill Mazeroski's home run winning the 1960 World Series, the New York Yankees.
I thought it was a joint meeting, and I joined it.
Pittsburgh.
It didn't do it for me.
So I think we're having some person talking over us now.
Yeah, I think people need to mute themselves.
Yeah, please mute yourselves. Thank you. Now, to set the stage, the date is September 28th, 1938, and the Pirates are a half a game of Chicago. who are playing at Wrigley Field, which in those days lacked lights. The score is tied 5-5 in a gathering darkness. And the umpire tells the team in the ninth inning, the Chicago catcher Gabby Hartnett will be the last hitter. Hartnett takes 2 strikes from Pirate pitcher Mace Brown. He then rips the third pitch over that short left field wall in Wrigley Field. The Cubs win and pandemonium breaks out at Wrigley Field. Here's a picture of pandemonium breaking out at Wrigley Field on September 28th, 1938. And check out that hat on the lady in the foreground. Okay. Now, listening to the game on a very expensive Emerson radio, which had been bought on the installment plan, on the 3rd floor balcony of the Christian Apartments at the corner of Forbes and McDevitt, South Oakland. Believe me, there wasn't a single Christian in the place, only Jews who moved from the Hill District, were those recently married lovebirds, Harry and Sadie Brean, who had moved from the Hill only a few months earlier. As the ball clears the wall, our dad lets loose an anguished scream. I should explain that our father, a devout Orthodox Jew, loved 3 things most in life: Yahweh, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and the Pittsburgh Pirates, not necessarily always in that order. As the crowd noise in Chicago built to a crescendo, our dad stares at the radio with a look on his face that our mother described as a mad bull or an enraged billy goat. He leaps to his feet, pulls the radio out of the porch's wall socket, and hurls it into the street, where it smashes to bits. He then collapses in his chair and begins to weep for many minutes. Our mother thinks, what have I done? I've married a madman. And so she had, but thankfully mostly about the Pirates. By the way, that 1938 Pirate team was owned by a Jewish family from Rhoda Sholum, the Dreyfus-Benswanger family, which owned the Pirates from 1900 to 1946. During those 47 years, the Bucks had 38 winning seasons. They would help things at PNC Park if Bob Nutting became a Jew by choice. Now back to South Oakland. South Oakland's heyday as a Jewish community ended by 1950. Although baby boomers like me remember Jewish kids from Frick and Holmes schools and Shenley High continuously joining us as classmates at Colfax, Roosevelt, John Mendeo, and Alderdice. Jewish South Oakland consisted of 2 main neighborhoods: an area near the corner of the Boulevard of the Allies and Kraft Avenue, now called Oak Cliff, which was very heavily Jewish, and an area south of the boulevard between Bates Street and Parkview Avenue. A significant number of Jews also lived in the area between Forbes and Bates on Atwood, Coltart, the Key Place, Myron, and north of Fifth Avenue on Chesterfield Road, where my Uncle Lou, Aunt Ann, and cousin Bernie Brean lived until moving to Squirrel Hill in 1961. South Oakland contained 3 synagogues, only one of which, the Tree of Life, still survives, but is now located in Squirrel Hill. We'll start with Tree of Life. Here's the building. It's a conservative, you'll recall this building. That is the, Kara, can you move a bit more this way?
Oh, no, actually. I
Possible, it's
can't.
cut off.
You know, it's cut off by this, but I can move that down for a minute.
Oh yeah, fine. Yeah, here's the Tree of Life. You'll all remember it. This is the main Playhouse building of Pittsburgh Playhouse. Okay, now Tree of Life founded in 1864 as an Orthodox shul following a split from Rhoda Sholum after Temple had become a Reformed congregation. It moved to Kraft Avenue in Oakland from its downtown location at 4th and Ross in 1901 when this building opened, and it formally joined the conservative movement in 1916. Tree of Life moved to Shady and Wilkins in 1950, and in 2010 merged with a Beth Sholum breakaway, Orla Simca, to create Tree of Life Orla Simca. And again, this building on Kraft Avenue ultimately was sold to Point Park University as part of its theater program. Point Park, in turn, sold it to McGee Institute, which demolished it in 2018. It is now a vacant lot, and eventually something from UPMC will rise there. Now, only a small proportion of Tree of Life's membership was drawn from South Oakland. Like the YM and WNHA, on South Belfield in central Oakland. It was regarded by Pittsburgh Jewry as a citywide, not neighborhood institution. The second synagogue, we'll show the slide now.
Not sure why it sticks sometimes.
Okay.
It's not moving. Don't know why.
Okay. There
we
it
go.
is.
Okay.
Okay. Well, a bit of an architectural come down from Tree of Life, but this is Ohav Zedek. It was first organized, it's an Orthodox shul. It first organized in 1917 and met at the Tree of Life. It was chartered in 1921 and bought a home at the corner of Craft and Niagara to serve as a shul. In 1938, an addition was added in the front of the house. As Jewish movement to Squirrel Hill continued after World War II, its membership continually dropped. It closed in 1975. The building was demolished in the 1980s and is now a city of Pittsburgh playground. Next, Addis Israel, also an Orthodox congregation. The building, which was originally built in 1898 as a Christian Orthodox, is still standing. Christian orphanage, sorry, is still standing. It was bought by the shul in 1923. The building is currently dilapidated. When it was still a shul, it was in pristine condition. To tell the story of the photo, Karen and I went to Ward Street to see if the shul was still standing. I have very, very warm memories of a man named Norman Krell, who I used to say Kaddish with at the Washington shul for my father. And Norman belonged to this shul. When he belonged, we would often come here after temple let out Yom Kippur to see the people coming out. It was a wonderful scene of people who knew each other all their lives. The place was pristine and beautiful. Now it's a wreck. Now, unlike most Pittsburgh shuls, it was formed by a mixed group from no particular geographic area in Europe. Their geographic area was South Oakland. It was once a popular shul whose high holiday services were held in the Carnegie Museum Lecture Hall before 1960. Membership dwindled as the congregation steadily moved to Squirrel Hill. The shul ultimately disbanded in 1993. Now, the last surviving memory of the South Oakland Jewish community for most Pittsburgh Jews is the S&B Deli at Craft and Boulevard of the Allies, where anxious hours were spent and was as much a part of the Jewish birth at B'Gi Hospital as a bris. And by the way, the Moyle was the rabbi of Ohav Zedek and lived down the street. But don't worry, the bris was no bris was ever performed at the S&B. Now East End. Unlike South Oakland, which for most of its Jewish residents was a way station on the road to Squirrel Hill, East End was a vibrant Jewish community in its own right. East End consisted of three communities, one of which itself was called East End, a crowded residential neighborhood bounded on the south by Margaretta Street, on the north by Bryant Street, on the west by Negley Avenue, and on the east by Highland Avenue. Stanton Heights, a post-World War II development at the top of the Stanton Avenue Hill, which resembled a suburb in the city, and Highland Park, an upper middle class area of handsome colonials, Tudors, and Victorians, adjacent to the city park of the same name. East End and Stanton Heights were heavily Jewish, Highland Park much less so. The area's business district, mostly on Mellon and Bryant Streets, had many Jewish merchants, including delis, cleaners, bakeries, kosher meat markets, and drugstores. All are gone now, except Stanton Negley Drug, where Road of Sholum stalwart Bob Rosenthal admits he misspent much of his youth. East End was a sufficiently important part of the larger Pittsburgh Jewish community that a brand new branch of the Irene Kauffman Center was opened in 1968 at Stanton and Negley. It closed in 1973 and is now a child development center. We'll show you the East Endites now. And there it is. Okay. East End also had 5 synagogues. All are now closed, but still standing. I'll discuss them in order as if I'm driving north on Negley Avenue. First, Binet Israel. We have three slides of Binet Israel. We'll show it to you first. This is the main sanctuary taken before the school was added in the 1950s. It's a 1940 postcard. Next. This is the gorgeous sanctuary of Binet Israel. And this is the ark. We'll talk about this now. Okay. The congregation was founded not in the Hills District, but in East Liberty itself in 1911. And construction of the current building began in 1922, was completed in 1924. If it looks like a masterpiece, it's because it is. It was designed by Henry Hornbostel, the creator of both Road of Sholum and the main Carnegie Mellon University campus. Along with Beth Sholum and Tree of Life, it was one of the city of Pittsburgh's 3 great conservative schools. My parents were married at Binet, Israel in 1938. Membership peaked in the mid-1950s and began to decline in the 1970s. By 1995, the decrease in membership forced a merger with Beth Jacob, a conservative shul in New Kensington, and the 2 congregations founded Addis Sholum in O'Hara Township, which still survives. The last service of the Negley Avenue Shul occurred in 1996. The building is scheduled to become affordable housing, and the Beit Medrash, the sanctuary we saw, will become an arts venue. Next, we'll move to the Addis Yeshurun. This is an Orthodox shul located on Margaretta Street, now East Liberty Boulevard. It was universally known among Pittsburgh Jews as the Margaretta Street Shul. The congregation also did not originate in the Hill. It was founded in 1916 in East Liberty, and the shul opened itself in 1923, this building. In 1978, Addis Israel, another East End shul, merged with Addis Yeshurun and moved to the Margaretta Street building. The congregation closed the building in 1996 and moved to Monroeville. And disbanded in 2002. The building is now the City Ministries Tabernacle of Faith Baptist Church. Next, Torres Chaim. This Orthodox shul was located at 728 North Negley Avenue. Again, this is not founded on the Hill. It was founded in East End in 1927 and bought as its building a house, to which it added a modern front containing the best Beis Medrash. Torres Chaim was the home shul of my beloved Uncle Arnold Feinberg, who joined after his family, Aunt Rose and daughters Barbara and Diane, moved to Stanton Heights from Windsor Street in, I believe, 1958. This shul closed in 2004. Next, we come to Masakeh Hadass, or as we say in Pittsburgh Yinzer Hebrew, Meshiki Haddas. Other prime examples of Yinzer Hebrew are Yamaki, Suki, Matzi, and Zaidi, which should be Zeta. This was an Orthodox shul originally located on the Hill. Although founded by Galician Jews from Poland, the shul was unique for following Sephardic traditions and liturgies. It moved to East End in 1953 and bought and renovated this house at 875 North Negley. The congregation disbanded in 1989 due to declining membership. The building was sold in 1993 and once again is a home. Now, as you might recall from the Hill District lecture, Zadie Brean quit Shara Tefillah on Miller Street in a huff, who knows for what reason, and joined Masakeh Hadass because it was the closest shul on Wiley Avenue to the Breens' home in the Upper Hill. It is only when Masakeh Hadass closed in 1953 that he reluctantly moved from the Hill District to the house on Windsor Street in Greenfield that Arnold and Rose had previously bought. I would like to add that Whoopi Brean was thoroughly delighted by the move because now she could visit everyone in Squirrel Hill easily. The final synagogue, Knesset Israel. It's an Orthodox synagogue originally from the Hill, founded in 1905. In my Hill District lecture, you saw its original shul on Miller Street, seen here, which had previously been a Presbyterian and then Mormon church. In 1946, it bought and renovated this apartment house at 1112 North Negley. The building was sold after Knesset Israel merged with Margaretta Street Shul in 1978 and is once again an apartment house. Now, if we apply to the East End, the same test I used to declare the death of the Jewish Hill District, namely the last state that a minyan was held. East End died in 2004 with the last minyan of Torres Chaim. To be sure, a significant number of Jews still live in all 3 East End neighborhoods, but they must leave East End to worship, buy kosher food, or engage in Jewish organizational activities. What happened? For 2 generations, The lure of East End for Jews was affordable, high-quality housing and terrific public schools. 3 top-quality elementary schools, Dilworth, Fulton, and Sunnyside, and a magnificent high school, Peabody, which opened in 1911. This is Peabody High School in 1954. A lovely Pontiac in front of it there, okay. It was a 1911 neoclassical gem that was hideously modernized by the Pittsburgh School Board in the early 1970s. The only remnant of the original Peabody are the 4 columns in front and the incredible, truly awe-inspiring auditorium, magnificent stained glass windows. When I was at Alderdice in the 1960s, Peabody was the great rival of Alderdice, both in athletics and academics. But unlike heavily Jewish and lily white Alderdice, Peabody was a veritable United Nations. 20% Jewish and 30% African-American, with the remaining 50% consisting of whites of every ethnicity, from East End, Stanton Heights, Highland Park, East Liberty, Garfield, Larimer, Morningside, Shadyside, and Upper Lawrenceville. Peabody prided itself in its diversity as much as on its incredible list of alumni, which puts to shame every other high school in Western Pennsylvania. Kenneth Burke and Malcolm Cowley, 2 of the greatest literary critics of the first half of the 20th century, sculptor and collagist Romer Bearden, singer Billy Eckstein, beat poet Jack Gilbert, actors Frank Gorshin and Charles Grodin, entertainment legend Gene Kelly, conductor and violinist Lauren Maisel, artist and human rights activist, actress and human rights activist Zelda Rubinstein, and novelist John Edgar Wideman. But Peabody in the late 1960s and early 1970s suffered the same racial and social turmoil that struck urban high schools all over America, as Black resentment and anger about racism collided with vicious white backlash. The result was that the Jews of East End lost faith in the East End public schools. And this loss of faith, when combined with the sense of abandonment by the Jewish establishment, with the closing of the 5-year-old IKC in 1973, convinced Jews that the East End had no future as a Jewish community. The result was not so much one of rapid Jewish flight, but rather a failure to replenish the community, as the older members slowly moved or died off, and younger Jews no longer moved to the East End. That is why the shuls lingered for so many years before finally closing. Could it have been averted? That's a question for another discussion. However, I'm quite certain that if Binet Israel had survived long enough to witness the revival of East Liberty, it would still be a functioning congregation, and the Jewish East End community would have survived. Finally, Roman 4. The Jewish community of Squirrel Hill, the place that never changes, even when it's completely transformed. We'll start with a quick tour of Squirrel Hill's Jewish institutions, which will be starting. Beachview, South Oakland, and East End may have died as Jewish communities, but the fourth destination for Hill District Jews, Squirrel Hill, is very much alive. Let's take a quick virtual driving tour of the Jewish communal institutions of Squirrel Hill so you can appreciate their density and understand the crucial visual and psychological role their mere presence plays in creating the perception that Squirrel Hill is a living Jewish community. We'll start at the spot where settlers moving down the Monongahela from Fort Pitt first settled Squirrel Hill in the 1780s, Browns Hill. We'll begin with the Jewish Agency on Aging campus, which includes the Ahava Memory Care Assisted Living Residence and the residence at Weinberg Village, shown here. And next, the new Riverview Apartments. That you see them there. Now we'll exit onto Browns Hill Road. This will be a fast tour. And turn right to enter Somerset at Frick Park, a planned development of 700 units that is the latest addition to Squirrel Hill. We'll travel through Somerset and make a left on Forward Avenue. And at the intersection with Beechwood Boulevard, we'll circle the campus of the Community Day School, a pan-Jewish movement co-ed day school housed on the former campus of the St. Philomena Catholic School, Church and School. On this field right here is where all the Jewish kids from Monitor Street and the Irish kids as well played ball. The nuns were really nice to the Jewish kids. They were horrible to the Catholic kids. Okay. And here we see the academic part of the building. Okay. Now, we've circled Community Day School. Now we'll make a right from Beechwood onto Tilbury, and we'll continue on Tilbury until it merges with Shady Avenue. On the right is Poetic, the first Orthodox congregation located in Squirrel Hill. It was founded downtown in 1881, then relocated to the Hill, and later moved out to Squirrel Hill, where it erected this shul in 1929. On the far left corner, you'll see the cheder where myself and a lot of people on this phone call spent some good times and bad times, but it's a memorable place and a beautiful Greek classical revival building. Now, continuing up Shady to Beacon Street, we encounter on the left the conservative congregation of Beth Sholum, which was the first shul to be organized in Squirrel Hill back in 1917. This building dates back to 1922 and has been expanded 3 times. Now we'll continue on Shady to Bartlett Street and turn left towards Murray Avenue. 2/3 of the way down the block on the right is a house containing the Orthodox congregation, Young Israel Sheret Tzedek. There you see it. Its shul on the other side of Murray was torn down for the construction of Weinberg Terrace for assisted living. Our next stop on Murray across Bartlett. There we are. Where, if we're lucky, we'll all end up. It's a wonderful place. Okay. Now, continuing down Murray Avenue towards Whiteman Street and halfway down the block on the left, great, is a building which Kessler Torah purchased in 1957 when it came out from the Hill District. Its name in those colorful names, because of so many secondhand clothesmen, was the Rag Picker Shul. It's now been sold to Hillel Academy and comprises a large part of the new building of the Hillel Academy's boys' school, which you can see here. The congregation worships at Hillel. Next, we turn left on Whiteman Street and then left on Beacon Street. And at the top of the hill on the left is Hillel Academy, an Orthodox day school founded in 1947. This current Hillel building dates back to the 1960s. And as you can see, this photo was taken on a beautiful autumn day with leaves absolutely making the building invisible, which again, unless you like sort of pedestrian 1960s buildings, might be fortunate. Okay, now, before making it right at the intersection of Murray and Beacon, we see a few doors up on the right on Beacon, the Kollel, an Orthodox learning community. Now we'll turn down Murray Avenue. As we approach the 3-way intersection of Murray, Forward, and Pecusset, on the left we see Sheret Torah. The Orthodox congregation left the hill in 1948 and erected this shul in 1952. A thing I really suggest you do someday is walk down and see Sheret Torah. At the entrance there, you'll see the 12 tribes of Israel and their symbols. A terrific piece of early 1950s sort of modernist art. Okay, now next we'll turn right on Pecusset, right on Whiteman, and left on Hobart, and come to the building housing both the Lubavitch Center and the Yeshiva Achai Tamim Boys School. And there you see it. The building on the left and the entrance on the right. Okay, now we'll continue down Hobart, make a right on Wendover, a left on Beacon, and a right on Murdoch to Forbes. We have now arrived at Temple Sinai, a Reformed congregation formed in 1947 with the help of Roder Sholum. The building consists of the former Worthington Mansion and an extension housing the sanctuary. Has 2 slides. The mansion is here, one of the great mansions of Squirrel Hill, and the school and sanctuary on the right. Okay. Now, driving down Forbes, we come to the JCC, the 3rd structure built on the site. The first by the Irene Kauffman Center, and the other 2 later ones by the JCC. The building's magnificent clock tower has Hebrew letters signifying numbers, and that tower proclaims to every soul who walks or rides past, Jews live here. We continue down Forbes and to the corner of Forbes and Denniston, which contains no fewer than 4 Jewish communal buildings. The building housing the Labor Zionist Education Center and Baal Shem Tov Shul, seen here. The mikvah here, the modern Orthodox Young People's Synagogue, this slide, and the Yeshiva Achai Tamimim, the girls' school, which is the former Hebrew Institute building. A block further down Forbes at Beechwood Boulevard is the Chabad Center of Squirrel Hill, which is housed in the building formerly occupied by the conservative congregation New Light, which itself is now located at Sholum. Next, we make a left turn on Beechwood and a left turn on Wilkins Avenue. And as we cross Shady Avenue, we arrive at the Tree of Life, or La Simcha, where, as we all know, it was the scene of the vicious murder by a monster of 11 Jews who were members of the conservative Tree of Life, or La Simcha, and New Light, and Dor Chadash, a Reconstructionist congregation. The current building opened in 1950 when Tree of Life moved out from South Oakland. It's been expanded twice. It will be replaced by a new building to be designed by the world-famous architect Daniel Libeskind, which will memorialize the lives lost. Finally, we head straight down Wilkins to Fifth Avenue and proceed to Fifth and Morewood, site of Road of Sholum, whose 1907 temple is currently the home of 3 other congregations, Tree of Life, Dor Chadash, and Beth Tikva, an LGBTQ congregation.
We'll stop screen sharing here.
Oh, I
and
will
just
stop
open up.
screen sharing here. Right. Now, the only place in America where you could have taken this drive is Squirrel Hill, the heart of the Jewish community of Greater Pittsburgh, the only metropolitan area in the country where the majority of Jews still live in the central city rather than the suburbs. Now, our next topic is why Squirrel Hill survived and continues to thrive as a Jewish community. The Jewish Hill District lasted for 70 years, the last 35 of which were years of continuing decline. The Jewish community of Squirrel Hill, which originally consisted of German Jews coming out from the north side, began even before Road of Sholum moved from its 8th Street Temple downtown to its current location at Morewood and 5th in 1907. By 1921, over 40% of Temple members already lived in Squirrel Hill. This base of Reform Jews, which largely lived north of Forbes, was joined in the 1920s by a growing stream of Orthodox Jews from the Hill, who settled south of Forbes following the opening of the Boulevard of the Allies. Prior to the opening of Taylor Alderdice High School in 1927, Squirrel Hill residents living south of Forbes went to Shenley, and those living north of Forbes were split between Shenley and Peabody. For the day it opened in 1927, Alderdice had a Jewish majority. In its first graduating class in 1930 was 69% Jewish. And I saw Shep Gelman on here. I want you to know that Uncle Izzy Frischman was in that class. Okay. Now it can truly be said that Squirrel Hill had become a Jewish community by 1922, when Beth Sholum dedicated this first sanctuary to serve a burgeoning Jewish population. This means that Squirrel Hill is now celebrating its centennial as a Jewish community. For the last 60 of its 100 years, Squirrel Hill has experienced a continuing out-migration of Jews to Pittsburgh suburbs, the Sun Belt, and the great cities of the East, New York, Washington, Philadelphia, and Boston. Given this fact, Squirrel Hill, like the Jewish Hill District before it, should have vanished as a Jewish community long ago. Yet the opposite is true. It has not merely survived, it has thrived. How is this mathematically possible? The explanation is that unlike the Jewish Hill, where the Jews left and never returned, the departing Jews of Squirrel Hill were largely replaced by Jews arriving from elsewhere. One example, and certainly my favorite one, is sitting beside me. My wife, Karen, who grew up in Kensington, Maryland, a DC suburb 100 yards from the Beltway, and came to Pittsburgh in 1978 from Boston to attend graduate school in architecture at Carnegie Mellon. Another example is drawn from Leroy Road, a cul-de-sac in Point Breeze where Karen and I live, which today contains 5 Jewish households out of 19 homes, a pretty standard Point Breeze ratio, by the way. Point Breeze, which has been part of the Alderdice attendance district from the day the school opened in 1927, contains a significant Jewish population and has long been considered by Pittsburgh Jews as something of an appendage to Squirrel Hill. In 3 of these households, both spouses came from outside Pittsburgh, including that of our beloved Rabbi Walter Jacob and his dearly missed late wife, Irene. The other 2 households each include 1 Squirrel Hill native and 1 in-migrant from outside Pittsburgh. This is a trend of long standing. Of my 5 closest Alderdice friends, only 1 went to elementary school in Squirrel Hill. Current Road of Sholum member Roger Loeb, who is married to Judy Camper, who helps run our gift shop. The families of 2 others moved to Squirrel Hill from Baltimore, Chuck Fax, and New York, David Lukoff. And the 2 remaining friends came to Squirrel Hill from Pittsburgh suburbs. 1, Steve Manis from Penn Hills via Stanton Heights, and the other Fred Cohen from Brentwood. By the way, I'm still friends with 4 of the 5. I lost touch with David when he left Alderdice a year early to attend the University of Chicago, his big mistake. This is not to say that nothing has changed in Squirrel Hill. Virtually everything has changed in the 56 years since my friends and I graduated from Alderdice. One major change has been the suburbanization of a great many members of Squirrel Hill's then Jewish community. Apart from Mount Lebanon, with its 2 synagogues, no suburban Jewish community of any size existed in Greater Pittsburgh in 1964, as demonstrated by the 1964 volume of the Road of Sholum Shofar Yearbook, which listed the home addresses and high schools attended by the 115 confirmands. Many thanks here to our good friend, and of course, Alderdice classmate, and of course, Road of Sholum member, Helen Oringer, who lent me her copy of the book. The parents of these confirmands were an extremely affluent and well-educated group who could afford to live anywhere that they desired in Greater Pittsburgh. Here's where they chose to live in 1964. Squirrel Hill, 83. Point Breeze, 7. Highland Park, 4. Stanton Heights, 4. Other city locations, 4. Pittsburgh suburbs, 11. And locations outside Allegheny County, 2. Now here are the high schools the confirmands attended. Alderdice, 73. Peabody, 8. Shadyside, 7. Churchill, 5. Winchester Thurston, 5. Ellis, 4. Boarding schools, 4. Munhall, 3. Allegheny, 1. Baldwin, 1. Mount Lebanon, 1. Gateway, 1. And Penn Hills, 1. Not unexpectedly, only 1 confirmand lived in Mount Lebanon. After all, the explanation is the Temple Emmanuel was already up and running in 1954 and flourishing by 1964. Here's what's remarkable. I mean, not just remarkable, stunning. Not a single confirmand attended either Fox Chapel High School or North Allegheny High School, not 1. Equally striking is the realization that the 115 confirmands, fully 71% attended a high school that was part of the Pittsburgh Public Schools. Alderdice Peabody, and God bless her, 1 confirmand still lived in the historic German Jewish area on the north side and went to Allegheny High School, with the original home of the population of this temple. Now, I did not have access to a comparable data set for today's Road of Sholum students attending religious school. But I'm absolutely certain that unlike 1964, nowhere near 78% of them live in Squirrel Hill and Point Breeze, and nowhere near 63% attend the Pittsburgh Public Schools in that area. In fact, I'm also absolutely certain that a minority of today's students live in these 2 areas, and of those who do, an even much smaller minority attend the Pittsburgh Public Schools. The dramatic changes in the residences and school choices of Road of Sholum confirmands are actually outstripped by those occurring in the lessening Jewish presence in the Squirrel Hill Business District. The only businesses of any type, let alone Jewish businesses, remaining today that existed in 1964 are Minio's Pizza, Pinsker's, Giant Eagle, the Manor Theater, Squirrel Hill Cafe, Squirrel Hill Newsstand, PNC Bank, Little Shoes, and Footers Cleaners. And let's wish them all, let's bless them all and hope for their continued and long life. Now, gone are 6 bakeries represented by Local 44 of the Hebrew Bakers Union, which we discussed in my Hill District talk, and your mouths will water as I say their names. Lieberman's, Herman and Hoffman, Ben Tischerman's, Silverberg's, Rosenblum's, oh, and the Waldorf, oh, the best of all. 2 beloved kosher-style restaurant delis are gone, Weinstein's and Polonsky's, and no fewer than 8 kosher meat markets. Today, the entirety of Jewishly oriented businesses number exactly 5. Pinsker's, 18, a restaurant connected to Pinsker's, Milky Way, a kosher dairy restaurant, Murray Avenue Kosher, and Shabbox, a home delivery service. Shabbox or Shabbos. Okay. Now, given the drastic draining of Jewish content in the business district, one would expect that the Squirrel Hill of today would have a dramatically reduced appeal to Jews. Instead, it appears that the exact opposite has happened, as proven by the Brandeis University 2017 Greater Pittsburgh Community Study, which found that 57% of Jewish households in Greater Pittsburgh live in Squirrel Hill and adjacent city neighborhoods, as opposed to only 43% in all suburban communities combined. That occurs nowhere else in the United States. The same study also found that Squirrel Hill was particularly attractive to families of school-age children, with 48% of Jewish children in Greater Pittsburgh between the ages of 0 and 17 living in Squirrel Hill, as opposed to 20% in other city neighborhoods and only 2% in all the suburbs combined. The study further found that Squirrel Hill was increasing in popularity with the young Jewish adults between the ages of 18 and 34, with 36% living in Squirrel Hill as compared to 33% in the suburbs. Now, the best measure of Squirrel Hill's increasing popularity is the high prices paid for Squirrel Hill real estate, not only in traditionally expensive areas like north of Forbes, Somerset, and prime parts of south of Forbes, but also in areas south of Forbes that historically have fetched much lower prices. As an example, let's look at the Squirrel Hill sales listed in last Sunday's Post Gazette on March 27th. As usual, because of a lack of inventory, no one ever appears to ever sell a house in Squirrel Hill. A total of only 8 houses were sold, 4 north of Forbes and Somerset, and 4 south of Forbes. Here are the north of Forbes and Somerset sales prices. 117 Woodland Road, 2.8 million. 1646 Overton, a condo, 618,000. 6552 Northumberland, 554,000. 5226 Forbes, 493,000. Here are the south of Forbes prices. 6364 Alderson, 408,000. 2326 Sherbrooke, 400,000. 5622 Phillips, 290,000. And 2032 Whiteman, 205,000. Now, I've lived in Squirrel Hill a lot of my life. And when houses on Alderson and Sherbrooke are selling for 400,000, you have a very desirable community. How do you explain the attractiveness of Squirrel Hill? I have thought a great deal about this issue and admit that my answer is based on nothing more than informed speculation. But I have identified 16 factors, 8 of which apply to everybody and 8 of which are particularly relevant to Jews. 16 factors. It sounds like a teen movie made by John Hughes. Wait, that was actually 16 Candles, but I'll go through the 16 factors. Now we'll start with the 8 factors that apply to everybody. And I could say Jew and Gentile, but it's also Buddhists, Confucianists, Muslims. It's a very diverse place. Now, first, a housing stock that, with the exception of limited areas south of Forbes, ranges from attractive to downright beautiful and is well maintained. But you should be aware that Squirrel Hill homes are overpriced and may well give you less for your money than any other community in the city or the suburbs, which tells you how much people want to live in Squirrel Hill. Second, a national shift among persons under 45 in housing preferences, moving away from newer homes, ideally brand new houses in the suburbs, to older homes with character in urban neighborhoods, provided they have low crime rates, which describes Squirrel Hill to a T. Third, extraordinary proximity to both the Oakland Medical and Educational Complex, UPMC, Pitt, and Carnegie Mellon, as well as a surging East Liberty Tech Hub. Fourth, a preference for neighborhood diversity, which is another national trend among persons under 45, which is seen to be an advantage throughout Squirrel Hill. And the latest available census, that of 2010, north of Forbes was 75% white, 17% Asian, 4% Hispanic, and 3% African American, while south of Forbes was 82% white, 11% Asian, 3% Hispanic, and 3% African American. Fifth, construction of Somerset after 2005, which added 700 new housing units of appealing traditional design in an extremely attractive planned unit development, encompassing single-family homes, condos, and apartments, all unique, none repeated. Sixth, diverse public schools in the 14th Ward, whose quality ranges from good to very good to excellent and on to outstanding. Colfax, Environmental Charter School, and Alderdice. John Minadeo currently struggles as a whole, but Squirrel Hill students at Minadeo continue to perform well. The key to the schools is Alderdice. Actually, the key to keeping Squirrel Hill a thriving community for all is Alderdice, which draws not only from the 14th Ward public schools, but private schools such as Community Day, Falk, Ellis, Kentucky Avenue, St. Edmunds, Waldorf, Winchester, and Shadyside, all of which themselves draw significant numbers of students from Squirrel Hill. Alderdice is a diverse school with a student body that's 50% white, 36% Black, 6% Hispanic, 3% Asian, and 3% and 5% other minorities. And diverse schools are another draw for today's parents. Alderdice offers 27 AP courses, and the AP participation rate is 33%. However, the school does suffer from a wide achievement gap based on both race and class among entering ninth graders, which gap is partially closed during the ensuing 4 years, but not enough. But again, Alderdice's record educating students from less affluent neighborhoods far surpasses any other school in the Pittsburgh public schools. Then finally, the Alderdice Gifted Program, the Alderdice CAS Gifted Program offers an education comparable to that offered by Pittsburgh's private schools and best suburban schools. And CAS students have an excellent record gaining admission to competitive colleges. Seventh, Squirrel Hill students are also eligible to attend two outstanding grades 6 to 12 citywide public magnets. The Creative and Performing Arts Creative and Performing Arts Academy, known as CAPA, located downtown in state-of-the-art building, and Obama International Studies Academy, an international baccalaureate program located in East Liberty in the former Peabody High building. Eighth, the availability from the Pittsburgh Promise of $20,000 in funding for use at a Pennsylvania college. Karen and I are both supporters of the Promise. Now, 8 factors are of special appeal to Jewish families. First, a wide range of synagogues and temples: Hasidic, traditional Orthodox, modern Orthodox, conservative, Reform, and Reconstructionist. Second, a choice of 3 Jewish parochial schools. Third, a strong Jewish organizational presence related to Zionist issues. Fourth, the availability of a wide range of Jewish social service agencies, ranging from preschool through elderly services, and a wide range of Jewish social welfare agencies. Fifth, the excellent physical condition of Jewish communal institutions, thanks to the UJF's Renaissance campaign in the 1990s. Sixth, a top-notch JCC with excellent programming, including the Kauffman Family Park in Monroeville and Emma Kauffman Camp in Morgantown, West Virginia. Seventh, Chabad outreach programs such as the Friendship Circle that bring together Jewish teens from all movements, and we need so much of that. Eighth, a growing Orthodox community in both Squirrel Hill and Greenfield, which has resulted in the revitalization of B'nai Emunah by Chabad and the purchase of the St. Rosalia Church and School to create a new campus for the Yeshiva Achai Tamimim Boys School. The return of Jews in growing numbers to Greenfield, which once had a thriving Jewish community centered on Lower Murray Avenue, which everyone called across the bridge, and that most people considered to be part of Squirrel Hill, is a very welcome development indeed. The only thing lacking is Lieberman's Bakery. Bring that back and I'll move there. Okay, one closing remark. If I seem to be a supporter of the Pittsburgh public schools, it's because I am. It is impossible to have a strong Jewish community in Squirrel Hill without strong, diverse public schools. That's it. And I'm happy to stay as long as you want to answer any questions and have a discussion.
Thank you, Rich. If
Thanks,
anyone
Rich.
has questions, please feel free to unmute, or if you want to put it in the chat, I'm happy to read it out. And thank you, Rich. That was fantastic. Nancy.
Well, thank you. And I can
Rosenthal.
say that with the Hill District talks, this is where the fun really started. You know, it was great. It was
And move
great.
This way a little bit.
Okay, yeah,
Okay, there you
great,
go.
great.
I think Nancy Rosenthal has her hand up.
Okay, Nancy?
See a hand up for Nancy.
Nancy Rosenthal, Nancy, can you unmute yourself, please?
Either Nancy or Bob.
Or Bob, one or the other. Do I have to do something to connect them, or just Drew?
No, I don't think so.
Nancy or Bob, you can also put it in the chat if you're having difficulty with your microphone. I'm happy to
I
read
think they
it.
probably don't know they're muted, my
No,
guess.
they're not muted anymore.
Oh, okay. Oh, Bob or Nancy, can you?
They're not muted. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is he denying
right.
that he ever stepped into the
Okay,
drugstore? That's my
Pardon
question.
me about Stanton Egley?
You said, pardon me about Stanton Egley.
Oh,
You want to repeat?
so I asked Nancy, is Bob denying he spent time in the Stanton Egley drugstore?
Oh, not at all.
The reason I spent a lot of time there, because there were a couple pinball machines, but enough about that topic.
Okay.
I think it's worth noting that there was a small community of Jewish people in Homewood. I don't know the numbers, but I don't think it was significant. But there was enough of a Jewish community to found the Binet Zion Orthodox congregation. And my grandfather was not a founder of that, but he was very active when they expanded and built their shul, which still stands, although I think it's now an AME church, at the corner of Hamilton and Lang. It's an orange brick building, and it's right across Lang Avenue, across the street from the Homewood Library. And after a period of time when the Jews just disappeared from Homewood, our family moved from Homewood to East Liberty in 1945.
Right.
And they, I believe Binet Zion established itself on Forbes Avenue up near the, I think the Zionist building.
Yeah, it's exactly, Bob. Its building is now Young People's Synagogue.
Yeah, right.
Right,
Young People's
right.
Synagogue. And then Binet Zion, I'm quite sure no longer exists as a congregation, but there was that a small number of Jews in Homewood, and they attended the public schools, Westinghouse High School, and after that, I just don't know what significance they had in the neighborhood.
Yep. There's a couple of again, Binet Zion was a more impressive congregation than most, but there were little scattered Jewish communities. There was one in Hazelwood. There was a synagogue on Glen Collard Street, right off Second Avenue, a very small one. Bloomfield had a synagogue. Also, there was one on the south side, and a little bit of a community on the north side. I mentioned Fred Cohen, my friend at Alderdice. He went to Perry High School, and there were two synagogues, one in Manchester and one in the sort of the wealthier Brighton Heights neighborhood. So there were others as well. Absolutely. I think what Beachview is unique is that its DNA lived on in Bethel and Mount Lebanon, and so many people have that connection back to Beachview. Great.
Okay, so that's my recollection of Homewood.
Right, right. Any other questions from anybody or observations or?
I think Tim has his hand up. Tim
Oh,
Litton.
Tim, hi. Go ahead.
He's muted.
You're
though.
muted. Tim, you're muted. Oh, muted. Could you hold up a sign maybe? Mute.
I don't know if I can unmute him. Let's see.
Um,
Tim, can you unmute yourself? No.
no.
Um,
Tim, send me your question and I'll happily read it.
oh, he's unmuted now. I
Oh, he's
think.
unmuted.
there he is.
Tim, go ahead.
All right, just a couple of things. That pharmacy at the corner of Center and Roberts that you had the picture going down Roberts.
Right.
My father bought that pharmacy in 1920 and was there until 1937, until the owner of the building, what was his,
Balter.
Yeah,
Balter.
Morris Balter, was Balter Paper.
Yeah, right.
Put his nephew, Jay Hirsch, in there. And I believe that's when your dad came on.
Right, right,
Jay
right.
Hirsch had the pharmacy after that. And then my dad opened the square. You showed a picture on Murray Avenue. Murray and Phillips was Phillips Pharmacy. And that was owned by Larry Adler's father, Phillips Pharmacy. And Solly Zalman worked for him, kicked him out, and then he bought my dad's little store at Murray and Douglas Street, where you were looking up Murray towards Hobart.
Right, right, right. You know, it's interesting, it's worth mentioning is sort of the Jewish relationship to pharmacy. In my dad's class at Fifth Avenue, at the Pitt Pharmacy School, graduated in 1928. There were 20 graduates from Fifth Avenue High School, the little predominantly Jewish high school in the Hill. And the attraction of pharmacy was it was the thing closest to medicine. That in those days, virtually every medical school in the country was viciously anti-Semitic. Pitt had a Jewish quota, they all did. The only exception was a school called Middlesex in Massachusetts. And it was, my father was, they were desperately poor, that even pharmacy school was a stretch. But this was a way of people getting into the medical field. And everybody was a businessman and a scientist, that you owned your own drugstore and you ran it. And the relationship, it's funny when they even take now professions you respect and people, when they deal now, you deal with Walgreens and CVS and Rite Aid, but you still have that same connection, personal connection between the pharmacist who's there, close relationships. The pharmacists are always often rated number one. And there was great satisfaction in being a pharmacist because you were almost a paramedic with people coming in with problems. And in those days of no computers, you saved lives. My father saved 3 lives. The one thing, and I hope there are no dentists on the phone call, you always, whenever a dentist wrote a prescription, well, often penicillin, the question always was, are you allergic to penicillin? Is often the pharmacist who asked that. And many times with interactions in drugs, you had the pharmacopoeia, which had different interactions, that you were really in charge of not counting pills, but really making sure that in compounding it, that this was a safe prescription. Well, at any rate. But those stores, we can talk for a minute in Squirrel Hill, all of you people on the call, you started, the first one was Marfield. As you climbed up the hill, you know, it was Salt Drug and Phillips Drug, then Beacon Drug. Then, of course,
There was also one at Hobart Street.
you know, that's before my time. I can,
Yeah.
I guess you could say that.
Every
you had
block
Sun-
going up Murray Avenue
Right.
had a pharmacy.
And the only chain was Sun Drug, and the biggest one of all was Rosen Drugs at
Right.
Fords and Shady. So-
Another a point of interest, you're talking about Stanton Negley Pharmacy. That was started by Dave Busis.
Oh, right, your family.
Yeah, the
Right.
Busis, that's Jim Busis's father. And they lived across the street from that pharmacy on Negley Ave, on Negley Avenue, directly across the street.
And I'll,
Dave Busis.
and I'll tell you, it was an education in life better than I got at any college, law school, or graduate school. It's at J. Drug, and that included sociology and real justice. But any more people that we
Well,
can?
Roz Sherman has her hand
Oh,
up.
for Alderdice. Where's Roz?
Well, she's in that box.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see. Roz, hi.
If she could
Can you
herself.
unmute?
Trying there.
Okay, there
Can you
you go.
hear me?
Yeah, we have
Yes.
Roz Sherman on. I think a great Alderdice teacher. Go ahead, Roz.
Thank you. Well, I guess since you said that, I would just mention on April the 12th, I think it is, I am going to be speaking to the Squirrel Hill Historical Society about the characters of Alderdice. So if anybody from the 50s, 60s, 70s, I was a student there myself in the 50s and early 60s, and I was teaching there from 66 to 99. So there's a lot of history there, and this is my chance to get my revenge. But seriously, it's going to be a very fun talk about the teachers and the students and the extraordinary people that worked at Alderdice or attended Alderdice during those years. So if anybody is interested, go to the Squirrel Hill Historical Society's website, and they will send you the information to be able to watch it on April 12th. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, you were talking about the professional schools at the universities. My uncle in the, I guess it was late 20s, started at Pitt in pre-dentistry. And my cousin has a picture of the whole class of pre-dentistry students. And she also has a picture the next year of the, oh, I'm sorry, the first picture, lots and lots of Jewish men were in the pre-dentistry program. The next year, they showed the dental school students, and there were no Jews, and the class was much smaller.
Right.
And I think that was, you know, very common. The medical school was the same way, and so on.
Well,
And
that's
engineering.
true. There's the school that was notorious for that was Emory in Atlanta. But I can say that it wasn't simply professional schools. We'll just tell one quick story. In the Ivy League, the only school that didn't have, there were two of them that didn't have Jewish quotas. Cornell in the public part of Cornell, the New York State schools, and Penn, because it was a Quaker school. And Harold Stassen was the president of Penn, and he received a petition that they admit more. This is from like Sigma Chi or one of these fancy, Christian fraternities. We need to admit more Christian men. There aren't good men to pledge. It's just Jews everywhere. And Stassen's reply was, well, I'll tell you what, the board of the University of Pennsylvania has met. And we're going to respond. We're going to give you a free transcript when you transfer. Won't charge you for it. And that was always the thing on Penn. That Penn was the downscale Ivy was the Jews school. Of course, that's all long gone. But that was the world. I remember it myself. I was in the Alderdice class of 1966, and I see just a person who was the smartest person at school when I was there, Ellen Schulman in the corner. I'll turn it over to her in a minute. But if you weren't Ellen, okay, I desperately wanted to go to Bowdoin College up in Maine and major in history and become a newspaper man. And that application asked for my mother's maiden name and my religion, okay, and I get rejected when a good guy that I knew from Mount Lebanon, with a Protestant with less good qualifications, got in. Now, when I was just about to graduate from Kenyon. I'd done really well there, a fine school. I talked to one of the English professors and explained about Bowdoin. He said, hell, they got a 3% Jewish quota, which was the percentage of Jews in the population. And that was in 1966. But I mean, that was true. And with Roz, going back to you, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Anything else? No. I was gonna say, then maybe Ellen, who I can tell you the last time I saw her was in the Alderdice Auditorium, where she was an assembly was held. And I'm trying to remember, it's the University of Chicago Britannica Great Books. I don't know what Ellen did with respect to that, except it was like the best in the country. And 2,000 kids were assembled to see her get the award. Ellen?
Well, with that kind of an introduction, I should just stop talking. You know, I was very moved with what you said about Chesterfield Road in Oakland. And you mentioned our
Well,
mutual.
you were relating it to Anne. Yeah, right.
Yes, so Anne is my aunt, and Lou was your uncle, I guess.
As they called them, the kissing Schulmans. That was
Yes.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
But at one time, the Shulman family had rented four houses on Chesterfield Road. The family had moved from the Hill District, and they moved into Oakland, and they moved to Chesterfield Road and occupied four rental houses there. And my aunt Becky Watsman, Becky Shulman Watsman, acted as the unofficial den mother to the entire street. Up and down the street, all the people in the houses, she would go from house to house. If you had a problem teenage son, she would take your son in hand and discipline him. If the husband beat the wife, she would scold the husband, and so forth. And she was quite a matriarchal character. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you for your comments and the wonderful recollection of Chesterfield Road. When I went there recently to look at the houses that they used to live on, armed with the information from the census, the 1940 and 1950 census of the addresses, I found out that most of the houses are gone and have been replaced by medical facilities, medical dormitories, medical school facilities, and so forth.
Yeah, that's really true. That West Oakland neighborhood has virtually disappeared under the hammer of Pitt. And there's also, again, this is not Jewish, but that neighborhood it's West Oakland, it's called. And Chesterfield Road was Jewish. Other streets like Dunsey and Buffalo Street were mostly Irish. And the Irish of West Oakland have been immortalized in a series of terrific novels by Lester Guran, a Jew who grew up in the Terrace Village, knew these guys from Shenley High, and they're terrifically captured. And he's the Jewish kid kind of in the group, and that whole thing continues to live on, which is wonderful. Great.
Great. So the next.
Next person is Joni. Joni?
Yeah, hi. I typed a question in the chat.
Okay.
But it's okay. I'll ask it now. So I went to Emma Farm forever, and from the Ikes, and actually from the old Ikes down on Forward or something, and then
right.
Yeah. So we would stop. The bus would stop somewhere in East End to pick up the Jewish kids from the North area. I never saw that brand new building that was short lived. So
yeah, right.
Did they have a house or something?
There, as I recall, and I know Joni, of course, you're Joni Forscher, because it's great. We're old. Oh God, yeah. What to say? Joni, there were two old houses on that spot, and if I know we were down before and together. You took a kid from the East End, from Peabody. They could do programming out of nothing. That they were used to. There were no decent physical facilities, but boy, could they program and do stuff and involve people. I just think my cousin Shep is there. I think Shep worked there as probably social work school, I think, at the East End Ikes. But at Emma Farm, I was struck. I was a counselor up there too. The Orthodox kids would kind of sit around on their ass, kind of waiting for people to do something and provide it to you. And here's the programming. And the kids from Peabody weren't like that. Eddie Sisway and the other guys I served with there, we were half Orthodox, half Peabody. They just on their own. It seemed that the lack of good physical facilities there made them, I don't know, independent, self-starting, whatever you're going to say.
Well,
And,
the lack of good facilities at Emma Farm made us innovate with programming there too.
and also,
I could never understand, how kids could go to a camp that had horseback riding and tennis courts and all that stuff. That was foreign to me. But I have another question. After my first idea of a question, but you mentioned about the discrimination getting into schools. I got into, I graduated All Rice in '68, and I got into several really good, Seven Sister schools. And I decided to go to Michigan. And the assistant principal, I think her name was Wilson.
Idell Wilson.
She was sort of in charge of admissions, and she was furious with me because apparently my turning down all those schools was going to hurt any other student's chance of getting in. I don't know. She sort of said that. I don't know if there was any discrimination involved in it. But I thought lots of kids were getting into good.
Well, I can tell you a great story about her and why she was mad at you. Her entire career was spent trying to jump over hedges of anti-Semitism and to get kids into the schools you turned down. And I know her because she changed my life. She was this Scots-Irish Presbyterian, rock rib Pittsburgher who was the gifted counselor at Allderdice. And I was a nightmare kid at Allderdice, that sky-high SATs, and I don't think I had a single B at Allderdice, A's, C's, and D's. And sky-high boards, classic underachiever, okay? And this was the same time the Bowdoin thing. And so I'm applying, and I get into W&J. And my father has a failing drugstore on the hill. He cannot pay for college. Just can't do it. And I get into W&J, and it says that you're admitted, but your need is so great, we're not going to give you a scholarship. Okay, because it won't make a difference. You can't afford to come. I go in and show Miss Wilson that letter. Okay, and she looks at it. She's kind of, not crying, but sort of she's affected. She always liked me. She said, well, I'm going to work the phones. Okay. And then she tells me, take a look at Kenyon. They like writers. You're a good writer. But it's a polite one, but you're also a fuck off. And, but I got into Kenyon and got, with her help, and got the scholarship that allowed me to come.
Wow.
That's why she, her constant, that's why she probably said that. I mean, because of again, I'm not sure which schools it are, but places, the Mount Holyoke's, and they didn't want us. We were, it's kind of like the way the Asian kids are now. Now Jewish kids are desirable but not then.
Okay.
Yeah, very much.
I remember her as really mean and a tyrant, and you have a really different image.
Yeah, well, she was. I mean, she was tough, and she lived in the. People in the call, hey, Steve Manis is on. Good. Oh God. Okay, fine. But the Arlington apartments had a dining room. The fancy apartment houses then had dining rooms, and she invited me after his graduation to come to. To lunch. And she just said that, I remember she said, you never tapped a bit of your potential, and you're getting a real chance now. And, it was because of her. She really was. Yeah, for sure.
There's another hand.
Oh,
over here.
Judy Smizek. also.
Hello,
Hello?
It's Frank.
this is
Oh,
Frank
it's Frank.
Spicer.
Great.
I want to thank you for the wonderful experience this evening. Your research is phenomenal, and I've enjoyed a wonderful ride. My question would be, and you
Before you ask it, I want you to know, we still get the Thursday paper. We still get the Sunday paper. I won't give up even if they've given up, but continue with your question.
He mixes you up with Bob.
that's my brother Bob.
Oh,
He
Bob, that's
writes-
right. Oh, you're the
He
Midday.
writes and I listen.
Sorry.
He
Okay.
writes and I listen. But
Right.
anyhow,
Yeah,
you
sorry.
presented a very favorable picture of Squirrel Hill. And I was concerned with the closing of Eaton Park, and I think Pamela's across the street, and other businesses. What's your prediction for the Jewish
My
population in
prediction
Squirrel
is
Hill?
that the landlords are killing it. I don't know whether Rockwell is either one of those, but those were purely, particularly in Pamela's case, the soaring rents. And as for Eaton Park, they were serving a type of food and badly that Squirrel Hill is not much interested in. If they'd taken the porch and opened another porch on Murray Avenue there, they'd be lining up for it. But I think the greatest danger in Squirrel Hill, one is the landlords. It's really true, okay? But other parts of it are really, for example, even the rentals, the Asian restaurant phenomenon, okay, opening up one after the other. The problem that it has is for a long time is it had a type of store. Linton's is the best example. Okay, they eventually will go down to the waterfront, but they were single stores owned by Jewish merchants who didn't have any kind of volume and scale, and that's even before the catalogs have come now. On the whole, it's doing well. A guy to really talk to with good and bad, and sense of a very balanced view is Jerry Spear, also my class at Alderdice. Okay, he comes from Roosevelt School, even before Minadeo, but he's a great real estate guy in Squirrel Hill. He's a fountain. If you've ever given fount of wisdom, of good and bad. And one of the things that concerns a lot of people is that you have, we told the great story of, well, isn't it great that the Orthodox are going to the 15th Ward and across the bridge is starting to crackle again? Well, it's because they can't afford Squirrel Hill. And the thing about Squirrel Hill used to be there was something for every price range, for every purse. You could buy on Woodland Road, or you could go Morewood Heights. The fanciest thing in Pittsburgh is Squirrel Hill, where the Hillmans lived. At the same time, you had people living on Eldridge and Sherbrooke, and and these were reasonably priced homes where you could go to Colfax and Alderdice and get a hell of an education. I can't tell you. I'm co-chair of the Princeton Schools Committee here, okay? And I'll tell you something. My view is don't bother spending your money at Shadyside or Ellis or Winchester. I mean, these Alderdice kids are great. They really are. And some from Kappa and Obama too, but the Pittsburgh public schools are not to be ignored. They really aren't. But what I'm saying is that those places are going away, that it's $350 and $400 and $450. And these were places where my friends lived on, Douglas and Hobart. It's not cheap now. It's not cheap. Now maybe it's a good thing, is because not just Orthodox Jews, but other Jews are going. Greenfield School is turning into a pretty good school now. It really is. Partly because
Well, you're talking to a former teacher at Greenfield School. This is Judy.
Oh,
and
okay.
you also might not know that my husband was the principal of
At
Minadeo
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Community Day and Reisenstein. He opened Reisenstein. And you also probably don't know that my cousin is Jay Hirsch.
Oh God, okay.
So it's a small world.
Very, very small, very small. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We've really enjoyed it this evening.
You're welcome. And I was just thinking just for a minute with that that is a real problem. But again, with the commercial district, it's the only business that seems to can survive now is something that's not in competition with Amazon or another catalog. It's not suburban malls anymore. And those are restaurants. And maybe that's what Squirrel Hill is going to become. But the thing with Eden Park and Pamela's, that's just ridiculous. That was all cost, all landlord. And Jenny, you know, you're in your class. It's Pamela Cohen. If she hears me, but anyway, I guess she didn't.
What?
Also, but the owner of Pamela's
Yes,
is in Joni's class.
I found that out, but I haven't been around since all those restaurants opened, so.
Right. Okay. Any more questions? It's
Rich, I had a comment.
yeah.
I raised my hand. I don't know if you can see it or not. So this was fabulous. Thank you very much. I'm amazed.
My
at your
next door
memory.
neighbor, by the way, on Monitor Street.
Yeah.
That's why she's saying this, but go ahead.
No, I was going to say that you were the little boy next door when we were growing up. But I just
Right.
wanted to make a comment. I had a different experience with the nuns at St. Philomena's when we used to walk home from school. You must have had nicer nuns than I did. Because I remember walking home and the kids would be lined up to be dismissed and they'd yell out, "Kike, kike," and
Yeah,
not
honestly-
one nun ever said anything. So
Well, maybe it's a comparison. Maybe they hated Tommy D and Joey McGuire so much
maybe,
by
yeah.
comparison, but I never had that experience with them. I really didn't. When growing up on Monitor Street, it was mostly Jewish, but we
Right.
had a group of 3 or 4 or 5 houses of Irish doctors who had large families. So there were about equal numbers of Irish and Jewish kids playing at St. Philomena's, but we always had a mixed team.
right.
So, yeah, but that was not my experience with them. But I
Okay.
do know that they did throw. Sally Jameson was our one Protestant girl, and they hit her in the head with a stone. I mean, that was really, it was all pre-Vatican II. It really was, and there was great resentment, less towards us than towards Protestant kids. And I'll tell one great story though. We live here on Leroy Road, and I ride buses often, don't drive. And the 74 bus, the shuttle bus, runs right from Lang and Reynolds to my old house and to St. Philomena's. And I'm newlywed, and I'm going out to catch the bus. And I know a St. Philomena's uniform. I mean, if I were 90 years old and in an Alzheimer's unit, and there's the uniform, and the little girl, maybe 3rd or 4th grade, St. Philomena's uniform. And this is St. Bede's parish here. Very much everybody goes to St. Bede's. It was a light blue, and St. Philomena's a very distinctive, very dark blue. And I say to her, "Gee, do you go to St. Philomena's? I see your uniform." "Yes, I do." I said, "I'm curious. I lived right across the street from her. Why are you taking the bus to St. Philomena's when you can? St. Bede's is a 2-minute walk." And she said, "My parents told me that St. Bede's was stifling my creativity." Okay. And the St. Philomena's that you knew by the time of the 1980s had become the hippy dippy guitar playing nun kind of place. And because it was run by not the diocese, but an order from Brooklyn, they had their own very, very progressive curriculum. The place dies, but because the Poli family, is it Joe, Larry, which one died, and they stopped supporting the church. But the church was supported by that family and the doctors. So, but next question, anybody? I see. Oh, Sandy, hey, a Brean cousin. I think you're muted, Sandy.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, first of all, cousin, the family is very proud of you. That was terrific. And thank you for the ride, as the verbal ride.
Thanks, Sandy.
A lot of work into it. As a Floridian for 60 years and with a lifelong attachment to Pittsburgh and Squirrel Hill, and an alum of Roosevelt and Colfax and then Alderdice, For one thing, just to confirm the attachment, that the lifelong attachment that we Jewish Alderdissians have to Pittsburgh and Squirrel Hill. We had for my February class of 62, we were about 110. I think we have roughly 75 still alive. And in 2 months, we're having our 60th reunion at the school. Statistically, 50 are coming to the reunion. And of the 50, one is not Jewish. For whatever reason, the Jewish students, we developed an affinity to each other and a lifelong attachment to Squirrel Hill.
I can tell you this though, Sandy, you're doing it the wrong way. That Ruthie is a member of the class of 65. And I saw their reunion book, and it's filled with kids from Lincoln Place, Greenfield. What they did was they got 1 or 2 or 3 contacts in those communities, and they went out and got the kids. So that you can, same thing, we've done a better job with that than yours, but not as good as 65. But the same thing, that we had people, you know, one from Swiss Home Park, one from Lincoln Place, from Greenfield. The only group that Gentile group was easy to get is Regent Square, because it's a very, very middle class area, and a lot of them were in the AP classes. So you were able to, you know, get more people from Regent Square. But it's tough. But I can tell you that in Ruthie's book, at least 1/3 of the kids were not Jewish. And again, in our day, that was about the ratio. It was about 2 to 1 Jewish to school.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we've done a very effective job of developing an email bonding. We used the internet from 20 years ago.
Right,
and,
right.
And it was put out to everybody in the class. If you are interested to stay connected, be sure to pass in your current information, your contact information. And we've proceeded from that. And we can't get the interest. But those 50 of us that are coming in from all over the country, we're close. We really retained the bonds, and there's a very, very strong connection with Pittsburgh and with Squirrel Hill, and it's something that we all feel. And they're coming from Oregon, California, Montana, and something to be proud of. Squirrel Hill is something very special to us. A quick question, though. It was a great overview of the history of Squirrel Hill and of Pittsburgh for the Jewish community. What about 10, 20, 30 years from now, or at least the next 20 years? Pittsburgh is, as an absentee Pittsburgher, we all hear about the gentrification and the growing high-tech industries, the Carnegie Mellon, Google, or Uber, et cetera,
right.
Which must be attracting or retaining many Jewish graduates or employees. Is there any kind of a noticeable gravitation of that population, the high-tech, highly educated, to focus on coming to Squirrel Hill?
No, it's Squirrel Hill is they're not old enough to, well, first of all, there's a sort of a financial hurdle to buy the house. But our daughter came back, she's in the strategy team from Duolingo from London. They're everywhere. It's Princeton, we get these notifications of people moving into your area. And the number of them moving in is just stunning. For example, in Molly's group, these were all Jewish kids from Squirrel Hill at Princeton. Molly, I had a lot of positives from Shenley Farms, but from Road of Sholum, Yael, Wolowitz, they're all back here. Wolstein, rather, sorry. But they're all living in Molly's downtown and Kauffman's department store. Ida just bought a house in Lawrenceville. I'm not sure where. Yael's at
Yael's in Shady Side.
Shady Side. Squirrel Hill has very, very few apartments to begin with, and most of them are kind of low-grade student apartments. And these kids are looking for something hipper and better. I mean, East Liberty is full of them. Now that's why I said, if Binet Israel hadn't folded, okay, they would be alive now. There are so many young Jewish people, they are coming here, and when they make money, they will presumably buy houses in Squirrel Hill, because I can tell you, you can't get a house here. But they are coming to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh itself is changing. That, but not for everybody. I'm addicted to the Post-Gazette Sunday real estate section. And if there are 200 houses sold in the city of Pittsburgh, there are 10 that are sold to blacks. And if you looked at that real estate section, you look at 20th Ward, 28th Ward, that's the West End. And the West End has some beautiful areas, Oak Glen and Ridgemont, but you see houses selling for 200, 280, 270. Well, you can see that they're doing great, and no, they're not, because black people are renting. They're not buying houses. And there's a steady exodus now out of the city to the more reasonable eastern suburbs by black families. But in terms of the whites, I mean, I had a too many stories here, but I have before I had a hip replacement. The radiologist, the Irish kid is my age, younger than me, but from Lawrenceville. And I'm talking about this Post-Gazette thing, and his house on 38th Street sells for $600,000. And he says, we sold that for $33,000 when we got out to Shaler. You know, it's all this, it's just like a spinning wheel, and higher and higher and higher. And the thing is, the kids, they love urban things. They love the look of the feeling of Garfield. Or Garfield went from Irish slum to a black slum, and now the gentrifiers are everywhere. It has a bright future. Now, but as for Jews, what can I say? For a lot of the kids, the Jewish identity means very little, okay? But for others, there's this growing havaraz and consciousness. And it's like the non-Orthodox community is itself splitting to people who really are indifferent to being Jewish and to people who really embrace it. And Squirrel Hill, it's all there for them.
10 minutes. Thanks again. Thanks again, Rich.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Another excellent job, Richie. Shep.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Well, let me ask you, we have you here, okay? What you worked at the East End Dykes, right?
No, Squirrel Hill.
Never on East End.
No.
Okay. Did Harry Pearl work at East End?
No. Also in Squirrel Hill.
Who did? I'm just we're boring everyone senseless here, but
yeah. Will Harrop, but that was 70 years ago.
Okay, right. Good enough. Okay. Right. Because I remember all the Emma Farm people from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Rich,
Rob,
there's a question in the chat for your
Oh,
cousin
yes.
Sandy.
Can you check the chat for me, for everybody?
Somebody wanted to know if Sandy's related to Udi Saja.
Sajay. There's a Udi Sajay.
It was Saja, is the way Rich's family pronounced it.
Yuri Sajay.
Well, in French, it's called Sajay. Yes, related. You were asking about Yuri Sajay?
Yuri. Yes.
Who moved to Canada.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
He graduated at Alderdice with me in 1949.
Oh, really? Yeah. His Yuri's uncle was my stepfather.
Okay.
And his widow is living in Bethesda.
Thank you.
Can I tell you what defines the new Pittsburgh? Now people from Bethesda move to Pittsburgh.
Or like Nancy.
Or Karen's sister is moving here as well.
Yeah.
And our niece from San Francisco may well be moving, her husband, also coming here.
Yeah.
I imagine that has to do, Rich, with, talking about real estate prices in Pittsburgh,
But compared to
real
San
estate prices
Francisco,
in Bethesda or
they're
in
giving it
San
away.
Francisco. Right.
Oh,
Right. No, I'm kind of bullish on all this. I really am. I mean, there'll be some tough choices coming. Is anyone here on raise hands or whatever? Have you read Oppenheim's book Squirrel Hill? I mean, it just is selling everywhere. I bought for a friend in Washington at the Politics and Prose bookstore there. So we sold 50 of them, and it talks about not just the Tree of Life incident, but the background of Pittsburgh. And what he said is, this is so moving, is that there's someone showing it right there. Tim's showing his.
yeah.
What he says is, Sandy as well, that the members of Tree of Life will do everything to commemorate and memorialize those lost. They'll do everything except come to shul. Okay. Let's say stuff chakras once in a while. Okay. But it's sort of, that in a way is a problem. I think to me, I've always been amazed that I grew up at Polizetic, and and I can tell you in those days, I don't know what you call it, what we call it, Orthodox was a much broader range of people, call it conservadox, whatever. But for example, the president of my Alderdice class is a Polizetic guy. People from Sheret Torah and B'nai Emunah helped run the school. They were different. They were more involved. Okay, and they'd Lanesville, and then they'd go on Saturday morning, go to shul. Okay, you could somehow put this into your life, and you weren't seen as, I don't know, like a fanatic. You were seen as, this is something that Jews did. Okay, now I wasn't wowed about that. They kind of respected and can do it, but there aren't enough Jews who feel that way. For example, in the conservative community, you have Tree of Life and Beth Sholum and New Light here in Squirrel Hill, and conservatism is losing adherents. Can all these shuls survive? Will we have to sort of rationalize? Now, the one thing that bothers me about that, I did that thing very deliberately, that tour. Again, a shul. See it. Okay. If Squirrel Hill rationalized and somehow, let's say, for example, Temple Sinai and Road of Sholum merge, okay, and somehow it's gone. One or the other. We won't be. Maybe it's a bad example. They're both too strong. But let's say, for example, if the horrible thing hadn't happened at Tree of Life, and it became a struggle between Tree of Life and Beth Sholum, who could survive? Okay. Well, that's going to be a different Squirrel Hill once we rationalize. And part of it is that people have got to get into going again. The thing that I've started to say, I can't believe that when I came to, I'll be honest, I joined Road of Sholum. I got interested in liberal Judaism at Princeton. I'd been an assistant dean there, and they had no other Jewish administrators. And my job was to pick the kids for the kosher kitchen. And they were clever too, clever little bastards. That the ones from the Reform kids, they'd say, well, the Orthodox don't need it. They have their identity. I'm from Emmanuel in New York. I need kosher food. Okay, they're like that. But I really did get into it. And I came here and joined Road of Sholum, to be honest with you, maybe to meet a girl when I first came. And then I did meet a girl, Karen, but Karen got me going much more often, like say Friday night. Now, we get 40 or 50 people, okay? And I can't believe, the beauty of that service is, Rabbi Bisno, Rabbi Henry, Molly May, the Friday night service, so beautiful. It's an hour, and the people there were wonderful that welcomed us. Why aren't there 500 people in that sanctuary? It's such a great, wonderful experience. And it's like I see Bart right up there in the corner. Bart was one of the people who welcomed us. Why aren't more people doing that? Why aren't they feeling? I feel wonderful being there. And part of it even was, Orthodox. After my dad died, I started saying Kaddish, and my mom twice at the Washington Shul. There's another community that welcomed you. I mean, that's the threat to Judaism. They don't feel it.
Aren't we getting off into a very, very uncomfortable subject here from your Friday night services? What percentage are under 35 years of age?
Very, yeah, slight, very few, very few. But at the other hand is I have friends who belong to, Havarot, who are, have people who love in that age are very, very much involved.
Right.
But at any rate, but here, my own feeling is maybe there should be something like junior congregation. They're really, which I'm trying to remember. I see Tim nodding. I think maybe you aged out at 40 or 35. I'm just not sure. But it was this thing where you were, you had an age group. Now, what I would say, Sandy, is I think that they're doing a better job of Jewish education. They really are for the current group. There's a good involvement, not at Friday night service, but on Sunday mornings in involvement. But it's it's something. It's So I guess anybody else, and are we?
We're kind of close to 9.
9 now, I guess. Yeah. Really, any other questions or comments? Or conversation. It's really enjoyable.
I just wanted to put a quick plug in. Thanks again, Rich. In 3 weeks, April 19th, we're going to have Rabbi Bert Schumann present on cult figures, Jewish figures on the American left. So we look forward to continuing the series and hope to see you all there. And then again in May, our own Rabbi Sharon Henry is going to present on the history of the Reform Siddur. So thank you all for attending. And Rich, I mean, I'm very grateful this is recorded because this is just a wealth of information. Again, on behalf of Prayer Practice and Learning, thank you all for coming.
Oh, thank you, Drew. Honestly, really, it's fun doing it. It really is.
Yeah, I was going to tell you one thing. Okay.
Yes, Terry.
Oh, I was just going to tell you one thing. Our daughter went to Shady Side Academy. She didn't like it that much, so she transferred to Alderdice. And she's an engineer. She went to Georgia Tech. And the math book, they had such good math teachers at Alderdice that the math book that she was using they used in her first year at Georgia Tech. They used the same math book because the Alderdice class was so advanced.
Well, I'll end the story with this with this story. Okay. I went to good colleges and grad schools and all the rest, and at Harvard, in my class, Fred Cohen was also in my class there, and we first became really good friends in our AP European History class. Okay, at Alderdice, and it was what an amazing group of people. We got the highest grades in the country. There were 26 people in the class. There were 25 fives. Mr. Foria, that one was the teacher. Okay, and we tied Phillips Exeter Academy. Okay, fine. And so Fred and I are talking, and I was a first-year student, he was a third-year student, and he said to me, when I look back, and he'd gone to Stanford and grad school in Princeton, and he says, looking back, the smartest group of people I ever met was that AP European History class. 3 people at Yale and MIT and Princeton and on and on. And said, something, I think maybe you're right. And we came out of there and, and again, in our own little, mostly Jewish world, but not completely, because there were a lot of, professors' kids and all the rest, and really some very smart kids from Greenfield and Lincoln Place too. But we came out prepared to compete with anybody. And we really did. We really did. And that's why it's important for our survival that people not walk away from these public schools. I mean, they, you know, there's a lot of good to be done there. And also you get to live with people who compose the world. You know, a lot of a majority overwhelmingly white suburban schools sometimes isn't the best preparation. You know, it really isn't. So on that
This
note,
was excellent, though. I
well, thank
really
you,
enjoyed
Donna.
it.
Thanks, everybody. Great, great.
Thanks again, Rich.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I guess this is it. So thank you, everybody.